So an atheist with like 1,000 times more subscribers than us replied to one of our videos,
Yes, he did.
and he got a lot of things wrong. So the Prophet of Zod made a video about us called How Christians Roleplay Being Free Thinkers. And he really missed it. He missed our point of video. He even says this in the description. He said, this video is less about arguments for God than is about telling a story of finding these arguments independently without the help of apologists. And I just find that totally fascinating.
It will help to view this video not as an attempt to argue for God's existence. Most of its focus and everything about its structure is centered not on the arguments themselves, which are basic to the point of being mundane, but on making sure we know Mary found Jesus just by going out there into the world and exploring truth, and force her story about figuring out what she did without apologetics. In fact, this "I did it all by myself" thing is so important, and this strange claim seems like the main thing the video wants to convey to us.
And we were shocked that that was the conclusion of his video.
Yeah.
Because you literally said,
Really got into apologetics.
and then I literally said, hey,
That's awesome.
watch some William and Craig. He said. And so it seems like, honestly, he was just totally missed it, confused, or that he was misrepresenting us and telling lies. And if he's willing to lie about a small YouTube channel like us, then it's possible he's lying about the other channels he's critiquing as well. So that's just something to think about. But Mary, he was talking about you. And he tried to make it out like you came to all these arguments for yourself. And so why were you struggling with all these ideas about where the origin of humanity came from?
Was she just sitting around pondering the origin of the universe when suddenly it hit her that it had to have come from a conscious being outside space and time? My question is how she came to this conclusion.
Yeah, so actually watching the video, I felt like he was right. I could definitely add in more detail to explain that. And I think what we were trying to do was just have that portion be really short because we only have a short amount of time to record usually. So the reality is what happened, like I said, when I went to college, I started getting exposed to apologetics. I think I shared that close to the beginning of the last video, and started having some questions about my faith. And the reason why, as Prophet of Zod was kind of saying, like, why did you start to have a faith crisis? Why are you asking these questions? So I graduated with my major in biology from a secular university in my area, and I was in a lot of biology classes, taking a lot of chemistry classes, psychology, a lot of different things, even my Western civilizations class, a lot of different philosophers. But what was happening was over and over and over again in these classes, obviously biology, we're studying life. And so they're talking about, well, how did life get started? And so naturally, hearing over and over again people that don't believe in Christianity talking about how the earth got started, where human life came from, you start to wonder, okay, well, I've been taught something different and they're saying something different. And so where is the truth here? Because they're not aligning. And so that's really where I started really thinking about it. I mentioned in the previous video, primordial soup. So this, of course, was coming across over and over again. You know, we're talking about microbiology and fill in the blank biology class. I mean, I took a ton of them. And so that was really where that began. And then moving from there, as I was trying to explain in the video, and I could see how you were saying, it seems like I'm trying to say, I just am thinking through all of this and coming up with these things on my own. But really, that was not what I was trying to communicate. So I'm sorry if that came across that way. What I'm trying to say is that I'm processing what I'm hearing in my classes and different ideas from different scientists, philosophers, but then also what I'm processing, reading different books from different Christian scientists and Christian philosophers. And so I'm, reading different books, hearing different lectures, and trying to piece through all of that. And so that's why I said I broke it down into a stepwise approach. So I don't know if that can kind of give some clarity, but I did just want to make it clear. As I'm saying, I realized I didn't think something came from nothing. That's as a result of thinking about extensively what I was hearing and what I was reading. I didn't just sit there and one day say, something didn't come from nothing. That's not what I was trying to communicate at all. I definitely had all sorts of resources I was using. And then, again, it just kind of followed from there, step by step by step, not just of myself, but, using my brain to look through all these things in front of me. And so I think I could have been a little more clear with that. So.
Yeah. But that being said, I think someone who hasn't been exposed to apologetics could just sit there and think, like, I haven't seen anything else come from nothing. And so you could rationally come to think that
absolutely.
we can't just be here from a primordial soup by itself. There has to be something before that caused that to be there. And so I think that's just logical to think that through. And he kind of pushed, the video was kind of pushing a narrative, and that it wasn't about the arguments, but it was about the arguments. We even shared William Lane Craig's Kalam Cosmological Argument, and you said, what? Because it's not that... and actually, you heard about it just last night when I told you the name.
Well, the last night before the video.
Yeah, the name of it. And you're doing what? Because our whole point of our podcast is to teach students about apologetics, and that's a kind of a big word that's unfamiliar to a lot of people. But why I rehashed it and mansplained was because neither of us had really been read much up on William Lane Craig or his books or his arguments before.
I've been listening to different.
And what William Lane Craig does, he's a philosopher, and he puts these Christian arguments in a logically valid form, where if the premises are true, then the conclusion logically follows. And so the Kalam Cosmological Argument has the conclusion of, therefore the universe has a cause. And if you don't like that conclusion, then you can't just argue the conclusion, you have to argue with the premises before, because if the premises are true, then you're logically committed to follow through with the conclusion. And so the premises for the Kalam were everything that begins to exist has a cause. And so and what Prophet of Zod failed to do in his video is he kind of critiqued our thinking and said that we weren't thinking for ourselves and we're being spoon-fed everything, but he didn't actually attack the premises of the argument at all. And so everything that begins to exist has a cause. And that's just rational. I think that things just don't pop out of nowhere, that there's everything is causes and effects from everything, that something can't come from nothing. But someone might say, well, you're saying that God came from nothing. But God is the eternal, uncaused being. And so God, it says, everything that begins to exist has a cause. But God did not begin to exist. He just has been there eternally. And the next one is the universe began to exist. And all science shows that the universe has began to exist. It hasn't been here eternally. And so you have to attack one of those premises to avoid the conclusion. And then some people in the comments were saying, how do you get to God from that conclusion that the universe has a cause? Well, if the universe is all space, time, matter, and energy, then something has to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, greatly powerful, and intelligent and personal to decide to make that universe. And so what can you think of that's immaterial, really powerful, timeless, spaceless to create the universe? Right. Whatever you want to call that, whether God or not, it's a godlike being. And so that's how we get to God. Other things that we thought were really shocking is actually you opened up your video, and we thought this was really cool. You told your followers, say, hey, if you comment on their channel or whatever, be gracious to them, treat them as you would want to be treated. And then you said this, it's just the right thing to do.
I urge you all, when commenting, to be gracious with these people. Basically, treat them the way you'd have wanted an atheist to treat you when you were a believer, and just be the right thing to do.
And we thought that was awesome, and we totally agree that
that was so nice of you.
that we should treat others the way we want to be treated, just like how Jesus says in the Golden Rule. But it just doesn't follow consistently with the atheist worldview. And even that you would say is just the right thing to do points to a moral obligation. And this is what some different writers say about a moral obligation. I'm going to turn to C.S. Lewis here. The moment you say that one set of moral ideas can be better than another, you are in fact measuring them both by a standard, saying that one of them conforms to that standard more nearly than the others. But the standard that measures two things is something different from either. You are in fact comparing them both with some real morality, admitting that there is such a thing as a real right, independent of what people think, and that some people's ideas are nearer to that real right than others. Or put it this way, if your moral ideas can be truer than those of the Nazis, and those of the Nazis less true, there must be something, some real morality for them to be true about. And so if there's moral obligation from some people, if there's a true right, as you said, there's the right thing to do, then that points to the real morality of God.
It's interesting you say that, just because, we've been studying about some different atheist thinkers and how they had a lot of different ideologies, but several of them actually wrestled with the Nazis in particular, and that not being consistent with what they were saying of their framework for their atheist ideology, and yet they were so convinced that the Nazis and what they were doing with anti-Semitism was wrong. So anyway, it just makes sense with what you're saying. It's pretty interesting to study that.
Yeah, and William and Craig points out that, but science is morally neutral. So if material world is all there is, if naturalism is true, then science is all reality really is. But he says you can't find moral values in a test tube. It follows immediately that moral values don't really exist. They're just illusions of human beings. And he quotes different thinkers. One would be Fyodor Dostoevsky put it, if there is no immorality, then all things are permitted. And he talked about Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre saying that that from the atheist worldview, if there's no God, then life is absurd. And that's saying there's no meaning, there's no values, there's no purpose. And so for the atheist to claim that there's something as a right thing to do, you're being inconsistent with your worldview. And even Dawkins is quoted saying, there's at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference. So why we agree that you should be kind to each other, but why from the atheist worldview is that the right thing to do? Why if Christianity is false and maybe even a dangerous idea to believe in, as some atheists would say, why not attack us? Why not crush us and crush our channel and to be mean to us? Why is it right objectively to say that you should treat us right? Isn't that just a personal opinion? Can't someone say it's right to just treat other people wrongly?
Yeah, but I would just like to point out, we appreciated you saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't feel like it is consistent necessarily with the view that you hold, but it truly was kind. So thank you for that. And I think you're right, though, honey. We've shared different times in our channel, but just following that point where it leads is really important to think through, because I think sometimes it's really easy to just say, hey, as humans, it's a good thing to be a moral person and not to go kill your neighbor. Or, for example, let's say Tanner, I find out that he's cheating on me, and I'm like, whoa, I look at your phone, I see some text, and I say, are you cheating on me? And what would the response be if we didn't believe in Jesus?
Physics made me do it. I don't have any true moral responsibility when it comes down to it. I can just follow whatever thinking leads me to.
Because that's what Dawkins is saying.
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins, who is a good thinker, but we don't think he's following accurately these conclusions, because in his life, is he living that way? To say there is no right and there is no wrong like that, that would be you saying, yeah, my physics made me do it. Physics made me do this. And then to say, as a response, what would my response need to be to that? Something like, oh, okay, I guess you're right.
Well, life's meaningless, so it doesn't really matter in the end.
Yeah, like, good point. We're all just going to die and be dust, and oh well.
And we
but
are.
It hurts. We're hurt when people cheat on us.
Yeah.
We're not just like, we're not emotionless beings. There's something that's pointing to a right and wrong there. When we lose someone that we love, or let's say someone cuts us off in traffic, we're not just like, meh, whatever. Like, we feel that. We get angry about it. We have a response emotionally because we're like, that was wrong. They should not have cut me off like that. So it can be small or big, but all those things point to something more serious underlying of why am I having an emotional response if there's really no right or wrong.
Yeah, it's just an illusion or something you have to force to make sense from the atheist worldview. Another thing is your 20-minute video, the biggest point was that we're role-playing being free thinkers, that we're not actually thinking for ourselves, and we're just spitting out apologetics arguments. But the arguments, just because we didn't make them ourselves, doesn't make them, that we're sharing somebody else's argument, doesn't make it any less true or any less valid, just because it's someone else. And we all learn from other people. We all go to school, learn from people, learn from teachers, learn from professors, read books, watch YouTube channels. And just because you're learning something from something else doesn't mean you're just blindly following. You have to critique it, analyze it, see if it's true, and it makes sense with reality. And actually from the atheist worldview, you have no reason to trust your thinking, as you seem to be more charitable to an atheist thinker than a Christian thinker. C.S. Lewis says this: suppose there was no intelligence behind the universe, no creative mind. In that case, nobody designed my brain for the purpose of thinking. And it is merely that when the atoms inside my skull happen for physical or chemical reasons to arrange themselves in a certain way, this gives me, as a byproduct, the sensation I call thought. But if so, how can I trust my own thinking to be true? It's like upsetting a milk jug and hoping that the way the splash arranges itself will give you a map of London. But if I can't trust my own thinking, of course I can't trust the arguments leading to atheism, and therefore have no reason to be an atheist, or anything else. Unless I believe in God, I can't believe in thought, so I can never use thought to disbelieve in God. I just thought that was such a good point. I brought some milk, and hey honey, I don't know, can you see a map of London in there?
Might be in there somewhere.
That's just a bubble. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to trust your thoughts unless you have a belief in God.
I did also just want to point out, though, I was really thinking through what you were saying about what does being a free thinker look like. And I don't think that being a free thinker means you have to end at the conclusion of atheism. And I don't know if that's what you think either, but it seems that way, that a truly free thinker, they aren't going to end with Christianity. And you were saying, as I told my story, or parts of it, that it seemed sanitized and that it didn't really show the reality of what was happening. And you said never can a person have a crisis of thinking or a crisis of faith and then end the same way with the same conclusions. And I really thought about that. And the reality is I did end with the same conclusions. I felt like they were reinforced, but I grew in my knowledge of why I had those conclusions in the first place. And so I don't feel like I was in the same place as I was at the beginning. I think I became someone who looked at the evidence critically, and instead of this just being, oh, well, so-and-so said that Jesus is real or that creation is from the Lord, it was, well, why would he say that, and why do I think that? And so, yes, I did still draw the same conclusions, but on extra evidence, if that makes sense. And I also, it may start to sound sanitized because this was over a decade in the past when I was in college, through college and then through 2 different master's degrees, looking at this different material and studying more. And I was so fascinated by anatomy and physiology and the human body, and how could that all just come from nothing? And so what I found in college really just reinforced what I began to learn when I was in PA school later. And honestly, those same thinking strategies are used when I would see patients in clinic of, okay, they're coming in and I'm going to see this patient and they're going to have a narrative, a story they're telling me about what's going on with them physically or emotionally or mentally. And so they'll have these physical, like a story about what's going on, but then I need to look at the physical signs that go with that story. And so I think being a free thinker means I can use my brain to look at the evidence that they bring me and to filter through, because sometimes, if we're being honest, like in a patient situation where I'm seeing one of my patients, they may have a feeling like they have a certain type of infection, but yet I know as a physician assistant, as I'm seeing them, that actually it's not the infection they think, it's something different. And I can tell them that because of what I've studied and what I've learned. And so being a free thinker does not mean that you're always going to agree with everyone's ideas, or that I'm always going to come up with the same conclusion that somebody else had from the evidence. But it means that I'm able to use my own brain to make that decision for myself. And so, I really appreciated what you said from that standpoint. It's so important for us to be able to think through these things on our own. And I was not just looking at a bunch of Christian philosophers and then saying, yes, Christianity is true because they all said it, so it is true. Or to spit back some argument that I heard, it really truly was. I'm looking at these thinkers, whether it be Charles Darwin or Richard Dawkins, or hearing different debates with John Lennox or Nabil Qureshi, different people who have thought through evidence, but then going to look at what they're saying and compare it to other ideas that are different and being able to draw conclusions. So I think that's important. And I did, like we already talked about, just that Kalam Cosmological Argument. We really are trying to help our students, some of whom are in 5th grade, to be able to process
and most of
these
them
ideas.
don't know any of these arguments at all.
Yeah, and so the reality is, it was funny, I hadn't heard of that specific, like the name of that argument, until the night before the video, when you were talking to me about it. But of course, I had heard some of those ideas before. I mean, I studied a lot of this, like I mentioned previously in college. But that being said, it was a newer concept, the actual Kalam Cosmological Argument term. But my goal was not to make myself seem like I didn't know it at all, but more so just out of a heart that if there's a student hearing that's like, wait, what is that word, that they can hear Kalam again and start to really process it. Because we need, to help our students and help people in general to process this for themselves.
Yeah.
We don't want a bunch of robots who go around and they just say,
blindly
Jesus
follow.
is real because Mary and Tanner said it in their
Well,
podcast.
I was raised a Christian, and that's it.
Yes, and you hear that actually, but we hear it on the other side too. I actually had a student tell me just 2 weeks ago in small group, hey, I'm an atheist. And I was like, okay, well, why do you think you're an atheist? What makes you feel that way? And they actually answered me, well, my biggest reason is because my parents are. And what that says to me is exactly what I feel like you're saying to us, which is we're just Christians because a bunch of apologists told us to be.
Yeah.
But yet that is not what either one of us has found.
Yeah. We want to pursue the truth and follow where the evidence leads us to, not make the evidence fit into where we want to be.
And we want that for our atheist student as well, that they would know, hey, we care about you. We want you to think this through for yourself. And if you draw that conclusion at the end, honestly, we would be surprised because we have found so much evidence for the Christian faith in whether it's biblical evidence or extra biblical evidence, meaning different ideologies outside and people outside that have shown different things, archaeological evidence, fill the blank. There's so many different areas of incredible evidence for Christianity. But we want our atheist students and people who have already decided that Jesus is the Lord of their life to continue to follow the evidence and to be free thinkers. And so I just want to say, I totally agree with you that we should get the opportunity to be free thinkers. And I hope that you will also be a free thinker and continue to look at the evidence. And I hope that you'll dive deep as well into evidence. And at this point, we draw different conclusions, but we hope that one day we would draw the same, that Jesus is Lord and that he loves you.
And so I challenge any of the followers, whether Christian or atheist, who haven't looked at William Lane Craig's, Dr. Craig's videos, the animated videos. He lays out different arguments very well in those videos of the moral argument for God, the Kalam Cosmological Argument, the ontological argument, the fine-tuning argument, arguments from suffering, the evidence for Jesus rising from the dead, to watch those videos and see if they're good arguments or not. And then also I challenge you to read the Gospels, to read the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because all the other religions say, hey, I'm a prophet. Tim Keller says this, I'm a prophet and I'll show you the way to God. But only in Christianity you have, I am God and I'll show you what I'm like. That Jesus is God who came down to earth to show us what God is really like. And so look at the words of Jesus, look at the person of Jesus, and see if he is really different and more beautiful than anything else that has walked this earth. And I would challenge you to pray an atheist or agnostic prayer and say, God, hey, I don't think you're real, or I don't know if you're real, but
I'm sure you're not.
Yeah, but if there's any possibility you are, please show me your existence. I want to know you. I want to know who you are. Reveal yourself to me as I search for truth and read these words of Jesus and things like that.
And I think that's so, so important, because the reality is, I think the Prophet of Zod explained it perfectly when he said that we just believe that people could go out on their own and think through things and end at the conclusion that Jesus is God, that he is real, that he died on the cross and rose again, that his blood covers our sin, and that there is a heaven and a hell, that there is a reality coming. And you're right, we do think that. We do believe that as you study and as you look and as you learn, you will be overwhelmed by evidence to find that God exists, that Jesus is God, and that he has a purpose for our lives. And so I think you nailed that right on the head. And also, you were right. We are newbies. We are new at this. We aren't experienced.
Well, we're having fun doing it.
You know, but truly, we love Jesus, and we love to wrestle with different arguments about it.
And we're committed to truth. So if you want to refute all the arguments and show us and do a response video, we'd love to hear it. And if Christianity truly was false, we would want to know that, and I want to know that truth. And we hope that if you want to know atheism really was false and Christianity was true, that you could seek that out as well.
And just the last thing I personally want to say is just honestly thank you for taking the time to watch our video and to respond. My husband especially was so just honored that you would take the time to do that, because he really has been so excited about learning different apologetics arguments. And like you said, as we're newbies, we pronounce things wrong sometimes and we stumble a little bit over our words, or sometimes a lot over our words. But really, you know, the truth is, you taking the time to watch our video meant a lot. We hope that even more people who disagree with us would keep watching our videos and keep telling us what's wrong about them, because we had some great comments that really were like, hey, in your video, you really should have explained these several arguments better. Even if we ended up at different conclusions, it would have been a more full-bodied argument. And things like that are great, because that helps us go back and start studying more. Like you said, that we would think even deeper about the things we believe. And so we just hope that you can tell from this video, number one, that we really appreciated your time and what you did and said. And number two, that we care about you, and we hope that you would come to know Jesus as Lord, because that's what's most important.
Yes, I want to conclude with the words of the Apostle Paul in Ephesians 5. Awake, O sleeper, arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. God bless you guys. Thanks for listening.
God bless.